think I'm in the wrong place over here. One second. Dr. Helga Gemara. Hanrabban. Talozin ze gufoi doimel yam. Its goof is doimel yam, which I assume is the color. Uvriyosoi doime ledag, and its shape is like a fish. V'oilo echad l'shivim shana, and it comes up once every 70 years from the ocean. Rashi says mina oretz, but the Achroidim are magia that it must be a Tosaifer. Uvedamai toivin tchelis, and with its dam, and dam is a word that's used literally. It's a juice, a fluid that comes out of its body. I don't know if it's technically the dam. Toivin tchelis, they died. Tchelis lefichach dam of yikarim, and that's why it's very expensive. Rashi says because they could only access it once in 70 years. Tanya, we learned. Amr Abnosan. Ein lach kol mitzvah kala shaksuva b'Torah she'ein matan schar ba'olam hazeh ula olam haba. There's no mitzvah in the Torah where you don't get schar for it. Sai in olam hazeh and sai in olam haba. Now, ein yodea kama, but I don't know how much the schar is. Zog the Gemara. Tzeu lamad mi mitzvah tzitzis. You could learn from mitzvah tzitzis. Mais about the mechad sheyizar b'mitzvah tzitzis. There was somebody who was very zayir in the mitzvah of tzitzis. And Shama sheyezoyne bekarch hayom shenotelas dalad meyei sehuvim b'schara. There was a zoyna far away who charged a fortune of money, but he couldn't control himself, and he needed to have from the zoyna. Shigir la arba meyei sehuvim. He sent her the money. He prepaid. V'kava zman, and he made an appointment. He sat by the entrance door. She had a manager. Her shivcha came and told her, and this fellow who paid you your deposit is sitting here, and he's sitting on the door. He's ready to come in. Bring him in. Nichnas, when he came in to meet this woman, 7 beds. She had 7 beds set up for him. And it seemed like you had to climb from one to the next. Sheish shel kesef, 6 were silver, v'yachas shel zov, and the last one was gold. Uven kalachas v'yachas, sulam shel kesef, there was a ladder in between each one because you climbed from one to the other. It sounds like a scaffolding here. Ve'elyoino shel zov, and the top mito was shel zov. Also, the Yoshva al Gabel Yoina Kishiaruma. She sat on top of the top golden bed with wearing nothing more than her birthday suit. V'yahu Allah Leishev Arum Konegda. And he climbed up to sit near her in that same condition. Ka'adam Arishan Ka'adam Achet. Bo Dalet Tzitziyosav V'tav Chula Apanav. His 4 tzitzis became alive and they slapped him across the face. And Nishmat v'yoshav loy al gabi akarka. He right away stopped what he was doing. He caught a hold of himself and he climbed all the way down to the bottom and he sat by himself on the floor. Now she thought that when he got close to her, he saw something that repulsed him, and because of that, he left. In the meantime, she's all insulted. How could you find a flaw in my beauty? So she came down as well. She wanted to know, no one was ever able to resist me. How are you able to? Amr loy, gapo shal roimi. She told him, I'm swearing either in Avodah Zarah or in the King of Rome, she'eni manichascha, I will not let you leave. Ad she'te'amar li ma mumra isabi. What flaw did you see in me? I'm perfect. Amr la, he told her, ha'avodah, I promised, Shaloi ra'isi isha yafa kamoisach. I've never once seen such a beautiful woman like you. However, el mitzvah achas tivanu Hashem Elokeinu b'tzitzis shema v'chasava ani Hashem Elokechem, not once but shtei palmim. Anihu she'asad lipara v'anihu she'asad l'shalim schar. Achshav, you know what happened to me with my tzitzis? Nidmu alai, they looked to me, somehow they took a human form, kidalit edim, like 4 edim, and the Mefarshim tell us, 2 edim that say we're going to be made on your Aveira, if you do it, and 2 edim that said, but if you don't do it, we're going to be made on the tremendous Mesiras Nefesh, that you're kovish b'yitzroi, and there will be edim for good. Amr loy, edim anichascha, I'm not letting you go. Li ma shimcha, uma shem mirecha, uma shem rabach, uma shem midrash. So that's like someone going to a escort and giving them his full identity. She wants his name. She wants to know the city that he lives in. She wants to know his rebbe, and she wants to know the beis medrash that he davens in. I can't believe he did that. I would, if I would be in that situation, I would want to keep my anonymity. He actually gave her in writing all that information. She split all of her assets into 3. She was going to make a huge transformation of her life. 3 with 1/3 of her nechasim. She, with those types of rates, she must have been a multimillionaire. So she gave 1/3 of her nechasim to the king so that the king should let her leave and become a Geiris. Why would the king not want to let her leave? I will allow you to use your imagination for that. Shlish la'aniyim, 1/3 she gave to tzedakah, she gave to aniyim. Ushlish not l'biyad, she took with her on her journey to the future. Chutz me'oison matzois, but the matzois she didn't sell. She kept them because she was planning to give them away. She came to the bench of Rabbi Chia. I think the sheet changes to Rabbi Achia. Yeah, to Rabbi Achia, who was much earlier. Amar lo Rebbe, tziva alai v'yasuni geyeris. Tell me whatever you want me to do, I'm willing to do. I want to become a geyeris. Amar labiti. Why do you want to suddenly become a geyeris? We don't usually find women like you, other than Rochav, who want to become a Geyeris. Shema einecha nasata be'echad min talmidim. Maybe you want very much to marry one of my talmidim, and because of that you want to become Jewish. We don't accept Jews who are only doing it because they want to marry somebody. So Haitzia ksav miyada, she pulled out this note that was written to her by that Yid, that gave all those coordinates away, and she gave it to him. Amar la, she told him, I'm very sincere, and look, I saw what the Torah, what the mitzvahs are able to do, because no one in all my career was ever able to resist me, and him, even though he was deep in Taiva already, he was able to resist me. Such a power, the power of the mitzvahs, that's something that I'm very overwhelmed by, I'm attracted to, and I want to give my life over. I want to be involved in Torah. Amallah, he said, okay, you sound sincere. Lechi is a chi b'mekchacha. I will accept you, and you can get married, and you could become a Jewess. You could become a Geyeris. And the Gemara doesn't say beferish, but she said, I want to marry that man who has such tremendous self-control because of the mitzvahs. So it turns out, let's think about it. How many ounces of gold do you think it takes to make a bed? A pretty penny. And how many ounces of gold do you think it takes? How many ounces of silver do you think it takes to make a bed? What would that cost? We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. And she gave that to him. He was going to have it be'isser, and now he got it beheter. This was his schar for being kovish b'yitzroi in olam hazeh. U'la'olam haba ein yidei kama. But I have no idea how great his schar would be in olam haba. I'm not sure if his schar is greater for this, or maybe his schar would have been greater had he not went in the first place. That I'm not sure about. But the point is, no matter what matzav a person is in, if he's aduk, if he grabs on to the mitzvahs, that will save him. Like the Velt says, in order to have a sur meirah, you have to have an asay toiv. If you just try to be sur meira, that will be very difficult, if not impossible. But if you're busy with asay toiv, then you'll be saved from the sur meira. So this is a Gemara that I cannot wrap my head around. If anybody has any suggestions, so this big Talmud Chacham, this tzaddik, this person who was learning in the yeshiva of Rebachia, he did tshuva gewaltig. But how many times you find that someone does tshuva and then wants to marry that person who he wanted to be chayte with? It's a very unlikely thing. You think, like, if he was from the top 10 Bochum in Lakewood, do you think his mother approved of the shidduch? What? Money. Oh, there was money involved too. Oh, there was money involved. There was something with Rachav Azoyna that Yeshua married. Yes, she was a tzedekis, and yes, she saved Klal. And all this, yes. But couldn't Yeshua have found somebody else? And it's so incredible that when the Gemara describes any reason why this woman should be desirable, it's because she was obviously a very pretty woman, and she was giving him a lot of money. Aren't there other values that we are supposed to be looking for when we marry? So I just would love if someone could share with me an insight, a perspective that would help me understand this Gemara. That's very, very nice. But wouldn't you want to marry somebody who didn't have to turn their life around? Like any one of us would probably have a lot of pain if our child wanted to marry a woman who spent many years in the world's oldest profession, right? Rabbi Huda, Talish She'ula. But you could be a shachar already. I can see already you're not you could to be able to paint that in a good light and that takes skill. Rabbi Huda, Talis She'ula, a borrowed talis, kol shloishim yoyim petur min tzitzis. For 30 days, it's pater from tzitzis. So if you borrow a beged, for the first 30 days, you're pater from tzitzis. We're going to see, because really a talis she'ula, is a long discussion about it. Could be a talis she'ula, it's pater min tzitzis, but if you have it for 30 days, people are going to think that it belongs to you, and they'll be choshid you. But because then people think it's yours, and you're not putting tzitzis on. If you're living in a hotel in Eretz Yisrael, hotel is, of course, something that's made for what we call transit. People who are in transit, not people who are living there permanently. Or if you were renting a house in Chutz La'aretz, kol shloshim yoyim pater min hamezuzah. Notice there's a discussion that why is there a comparison to mezuzah? Mezuzah is chayves hadir, the people who lives in it, it's a shmir for him. But if you're renting a house in Eretz Yisrael, then oisa mezuzah alter. Why? Mishum yishuv Eretz Yisrael. And Rashi explains there's two reasons for the yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Number one, if you spend money on a mezuzah, you know how to take the mezuzah off when you leave. So if you spend money on a mezuzah, you're not likely to break your lease, you're likely to renew your lease to save on the cost of the mezuzah. So that keeps people in Eretz Yisrael. And even if you would leave, it'll be so much easier for this landlord to find another tenant because there's already a mezuzah on the door. It saves the next tenant the expense of buying a mezuzah. Tefillah shel yad eino ma'keves. Amar Reb Chisda lo shanu ela sheyesh lo. If you have both tefillin, shel yad and shel rosh, you're only putting one on, it's not ma'akev the mitzvah for the one that you're putting on. But if you don't have another tefillin, so if you're wearing a shel rosh, you don't have shel yad, or vice versa, then it will be ma'akev. And the Gemara challenged that. Amru loy, they asked Reb Chisda, Amrat, you actually said that? Amru loy, no, I didn't say it. In other words, I'm being chayzer. Ela man the last like trey mitzvahs, chada mitzvah nami loy lavet. You think I would say something like that? That just because you can't do both mitzvahs, you should throw out the baby with the bathwater and not do any mitzvahs? But the Lamaisa Reb Chisda originally said it. What was he thinking? If we say that you're Mekayim Shal Rosh without a Shal Yad, then you're not going to be misamet so much to get the Shal Yad, because no, at least I'm Yoytus Shal Rosh. But if we tell you that even the Shal Rosh that you have, you're not going to be Mekayim the mitzvah unless you accompany it with the Shal Yad, then it'll be more of an incentive to someone to buy the complete set of tefillin. But I guess at the end of the day, why would we tell somebody not to be Mekayim a mitzvah just because he cannot be Mekayim the other mitzvah? Amar B'Sheshes, Kol she'eino maniach tefillin if someone doesn't wear tefillin, over b'shmoina asay. He's over on 8 asays. Rashi has two different cheshbonis, either because for each one of the psukim, it says, of the 4 psukim, it says ukshatim, it says ukishatim lo shal yidecha v'ayu l'taytav b'necha. Those are 2 mitzvahs times 4 is 8. There are others who learn that there's specific mitzvahs asay, and Rashi goes through a list of 8 mitzvahs asays that are involved. If you don't have tzitzis, over b'chamisha asay. You over on 5 asays. Rashi says v'asu v'nosnu v'haya u'isem and gedilim ta'asalacha. V'chol koyin shein oil duchen, a koyin who's called up koyanim and he doesn't go to duchen, over begimel. He's over in begimel asay. V'chol shein mezuzah b'peschai, over b'shnei asay. He's over in 2. Uchsaftem. It says that twice. Before we go turn over, Tosfos has a long discussion on the halachas of Nesias Kapayim, and he says that you only call Koyanim if there are 2 Koyanim. If there are not 2 Koyanim, then there is no Chiv Asay, although you're still supposed to go and Duchen, but only if there are, there's a Chiv Asay only if there are 2 Koyanim. That's one thing he says. He says if the Koyan's not in the room when they call him, then he's not mukhif to go up. He doesn't have a chiv asay. And Tosfos also has a discussion who should be calling him up. Should it be the chazan or should it be the gabai? And Tosfos concludes it should be the gabai, although b'yas it's the chazan. Shenemar, it says in the pasuk, how do you know that you were tefillin yomar yomim? Shenemar state in the pasuk, Hashem aleim yichyu. If the shorosh is on you, then you're going to live. Ulechol bahen, which the Mashal says is referring to the Shalyad, Chaye Ruchi V'Sachlimeni V'Achieni. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Rashi seems to learn that Hashem Aleim is referring to Side Shalyad, Side Shalrosh, but the Mashal says that half the pasuk is the Shalrosh and the other half is the Shalyad. Hasolos Hashem Imak V'Nesayayin. If you have a Minchas Nesachim which is brought to accompany a carbon, so you have Solos and Shemen for the Mincha, and then it's accompanied by the Nesachim of wine. So they are not, if you don't have Solos and Shemen, you could still do the Nesachim, and vice versa. Then the Matan shall gabe Mizbech HaChitzon. Anytime you have to spritz dam on the Mizbech HaChitzon, if you require more than one Matan, such as a Chatos, where you need to place dam on every Keren, if you did one, it'll be good enough. Tandar Abanam. It says in the pasuk Uminchasam v'nis kayem, which is mashma have mincha v'achkach have nisachim. What do you bring first? The mincha. Then you bring the nisachim. Rabbi Omer punkt v'keret. It says zevach u'nisachim v'yom b'yomai. So after the zevach, you go right to the nisachim. Have zevach v'achkach have nisachim, and then you bring the mincha. Frank Lamar Rabbi Nami Aksev Uminchasam v'nis kayem, which would be mashma that the mincha is first, then the nisachim. So Lamar humibayif leminchasam v'niskeim b'layla u'minchasam v'niskeim afilu l'machar. The mincha and the nisachim could be brought not only on the same day, directly accompanying the carbon, but as we learned, they could also be brought on a later day. So maybe the nisachim should go first. The Rabbanan no haumi baile liched the zeiri for the limud that zeiri taught us. Yomer zeiri nisachim eskachin el b'shchita asazevach. At what point do the nisachim become niskavish b'shchita asazevach? And then from there on, it will be possible. Possible Yosy, it gets Kedushas Guf. Once the animal that it was designated to be the Minchas Nesachim for is shechted. Doesn't Rabbi need that pasuk of Zavach and Chasam for Zeiri? So how could he learn from there that the Nesachim are before the Mincha? And so how can he learn from there that the Nesachim are after the Mincha? So we have to go back to the drawing board to understand the Machlokes Rebbe and the Rabbanan. Elahanu Tamar the Rabbanan. The reason why the Rabbanan say first the Mincha, then the Nesachim. Tichsiv Oila u'Mincha. It says Oila u'Mincha. So the Oila comes first, then comes the Mincha after it. For Rabbi Nami Yakshav Oila Mincha. According to Rabbi, who says that the Mincha is only after the Nesachim. What does he do with the pasuk of Oila Mincha? Ela, and you must say that Beboim im Hazevach. That pasuk is speaking b'boim imazevach, where you're bringing the mincha together with the zevach. Then the chulu amaloi pligi the mincha the achakach nesachim. If you're bringing it all together with the carbon same day, then everybody agrees first the mincha, then the nesachim. The haksiv oilo mincha. But keep pligi, where is their machloikis? When you're having their rabbanon, now we're qualifying their machloikis. Dafke b'void b'fnei atzman. If you brought the mincha and the nesachim disconnected from the carbon, you brought it the next day. Which one do you bring first? Rabbanon savri midaboim in masevach mincha v'ach nesachim b'fnei atzman nami mincha v'ach nesachim. The same order that you would use if you would be accompanying the carbon is the order you should use, even though you're not accompanying the carbon. For Rebbe, Hasamu the Iri, Hasamu the ID the Ischel Bachila, Gomer Lala Kula Milsa Achila. If you're accompanying the carbon, which is like Achila Samizbech, so then when you continue with the Mincha, you'll give the Achila to the Mizbech first, right? You drink, you eat, and then you drink. Aval B'fnei Atzman, but if you're not bringing it to accompany the Achila Sakarbon, well then Nesachem Adifi, Nesachem should take precedence. Why? Hoyel the Misamra Shira Alayu. The shir that Levim sang by a carbon was during the pouring of the Nesachim, not during the Karvas of Mincha. So therefore, if you're just doing a Mincha and Nesachim should be first because that induces the Shiras Halavim. Hamatana shal mizbech achitzon ein machvazu. So tanu rabbanon minayin lachal nitna mizbech achitzon. Shenostam b'matana achas shekiper shenemer v'dam zivachecha yishavech al mizbech Hashem aloikecha. Yishavech is one big shvicha. That means you could be mekayim the mitzvah of the carbon even if you only have one big matana. Zok the heilige Gemara weiter. Haporim v'ha'elim v'akvosim einon ma'akvan zeh. So the first question is, when are you bringing these carbonates? Which parim, which elim, and which kavasim are we talking about? And that's what the Gemara is going to work on. Reb Shimon Omer, im hayu lahem parim merubim, v'lo hayu lahem nisach. What if they had a lot of parim, but they didn't have enough nisachim, enough wine, to accompany each par with the appropriate amount of wine? So you know what you should better do? Yavi par echad u'nisachim. Just bring as many oxen as you have adequate wine to bring the Sachem for it. And the rest don't bring it all. It's better that than to bring them all and then you're not going to have them in Sachem. Exactly what parim, elim, and kvasim are we referring to, is the Mishnah referring to when it says, Ein ma'akfen zeseh. If it's those karbanos that are brought on Sukkos, those are for sure al ma'akiv. Kamishpat, kimishpatam ksiv behu, which Rashi says, kimishpat mashma ikuva. So you can't say that that's what our Mishnah is referring to. Elo, maybe we're referring to the karbanos that are brought on Rosh Chodesh, the Rosh Chodesh Vatzeres, and the karbanos that are brought on Shavuos, the Chumash HaPekudim that you could find in the Chumash HaPekudim, which I believe is Sefer Bamidbar, I think, right? Numbers is Bamidbar, right? Vayikra is Leviticus, right? But there's the Chumash HaPekudim. Zog to Gemara, that's also going to be a problem because Elim dehecha. If the Mishnah is speaking about a carbon that requires multiple elim, elim is plural. Idahanu, if we're talking about the karbanos that are in the Chumash HaPekudim that are in Bamidbar, the ayolhu, it only lists off one singular ayol. So that can't be what our Mishnah is referring to because our Mishnah is talking about elim. Ella the Atzeres, the Teres Kahanim. It must be referring to a different set of elim, which are brought down in the Parsha in Vayikra, and those are the elim that are brought as shalomim to accompany the Shtei Alechem. So there was an aisle that was brought, which is mentioned in Bamidbar. That's a singular aisle, but there's two elim that are required to be brought with the Shtei Alechem. Maybe that's what it's referring to, our Mishnah, when it says it's not Ma'akav Zesa. But that's not true, because Havayik Sibu, in the Pasuk, in Vayikra, when it talks about the Shtei Alechem, it says, Havayik, it says, V'kraftem al Alechem, Shiva Kvasim, Tamimim B'nei Shana, upar ben bakar echad ve'elim shnoim. But it says yiyu oilol Hashem. Yiyu means havaya, which is ma'akiv. So once again, how could the Mishnah be referring to those elim? Zok the Gemara la'olam dat seres, the Teres Kahanim. We're speaking about the two elim that accompany the Shtei Alechem. And that's what our Mishnah is referring to when our Mishnah says that the elim are not ma'akiv ze'eseh. V'hachik amar. And this is what the Mishnah means to say. Loi elim the Teres Kahanim ma'akvilei la'ayal the chumash ha'pekudim. If you couldn't bring the two elim from Vayikra, it doesn't have any impact on the kashrus of the ayal that has to be brought on Shavuos, as mentioned in Sefer Bamidbar. V'loi ayal the chumash ha'pekudim ma'akev lahu la'elim the Teres Kahanim. So that is what the Mishnah is referring to when it says elim. It means there's three elim that are brought on Shavuos. One's part of the Musafim, and two are related to the Shtei Alechem. They are not ma'akiv zeh ezeh. Okay, let's stop here, and we'll be mamshech b'Hashem tomorrow. I could get to dark, but I'll save this for tomorrow. Shkoyach. So, David, what is your insight on what happened with Rochav and what happened in our Gemara? It's just such a wild story.
Okay, I can only suggest one thing. B'makam bal tshuva emed, there's this expression like that.
Yeah, that's right. But Lamaisa, it doesn't work in Shaluchim so good, that one.
Okay, you got a kasha.
And it's more than that. It's more than that. The Gemara, whenever it talks about the Shvach of Rochav, what does it talk about? Anyone who thinks of her can't control himself, right? Anytime anyone who ever saw her thinks of her, right, he's automatically going to be Moitzi Zera. Like, is that what Yeshua wants people to be saying about his wife?
No one said it then. It was said afterward. And the Gemara said it.
The Gemara said, like, no, we're looking to be Meshabeach, a woman that in our ideals, it's superficial. You have to look for Eishes Chayil, Miyimtza, with Midas Toivus. But all the Gemara seems to talk about is beauty. Yeah. And not only beauty, more than that. It's a lot more than beauty when you're talking about the reaction that men have towards her, physical reactions they have. Involuntary physical reactions, like and I just think it's a wild thing with which to be meshavech. I never heard someone like speak meshavech at the kala with anybody. Someone sees her.
That's true. I never heard it either at a Shabbat brachas. Yeah.
Okay, today's joke. There was a Yid who needed a job, and he saw a sign that they're looking for lumberjacks in Northern Ontario. So a little Yidla comes, he finds himself an axe facing a Purim Gestell store, and he goes there and he says, I'm ready to take on the job. So he says, you little Jew, you can't do nothing. You want to bet I could? I'll show you I could. So he says, okay, you see that huge tree out there? Chop it down. Call me when it's done. Call me in a couple of days when you're done. 10 minutes later, he comes back, I chopped the tree down. The guy's amazed. He says, wow, how did you do something like that? He says, what are you talking about? When I was younger, I chopped down all the trees in the Sahara forest. So the guy says, it's not the Sahara forest, it's the Sahara desert. He says, yeah, that's what they call it now. Okay. Have an awesome day.